Hey guys, and welcome to the school station. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about specialized cells in plants. This is from the AQA GCSE Biology 91 paper from the unit Cells and Organization. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about specialized cells in plants. These are specific cells that are actually in plants. Before getting into the video, I would just like to do a recap about animal and plant cells. I've actually made a whole video about animal and plant cells, so you guys can go and check it out if you want. But a recap about animal and plant cells are basically what they specifically are. Animal and plant cells are examples of eukaryotic cells, which is also another video I made. Animal cells are cells that are in animals, including humans, because us humans are animals. And plant cells are cells that are in plants. They make their own food by photosynthesis. We should know the difference between animals and plants, and that animals are basically people or specific organisms that actually have to search for their food, while plant cells actually stay situated in one specific place and they actually make their own food by photosynthesis. So this is basically what we have to understand about animal and plant cells. So let's just get right into the video about what are specialized cells and the four main examples that we have to learn for our exam about specialized cells in plants. So first of all, we actually have to know what are specialized cells. Specialized cells are cells that have special features or characteristics that help them perform their job. So how I like to remember this is I basically like to relate this into real life. We already know that there are actually many different types of jobs in this world. You can be a doctor, you can be a lawyer, you can be a teacher, you can be a cleaner, you can literally be any job you like. However, all of these jobs, they've actually been trained for a certain degree or level to actually be able to perform that job. They've actually had to do something, and they actually have special features or characteristics. They have those special degrees, or they have a specific level of training to be able to perform their jobs. So therefore, specialized cells, they are also basically, you can just treat them as humans, and they also have special features or characteristics that help them perform their job. They have a specific job to do, and they actually have specific things or features that actually help them to do their specific job. So that's basically what are specialized cells. So now we're going to go on to the four main examples you'll have to know about specialized cells in plants. I've already made a video about specialized cells in animals, which you guys can also go and check out. But specialized cells in plants, these are the four main examples you have to know. The first thing is photosynthetic cells. So you'll have to know the four main examples, their jobs and their features. So photosynthetic cells are basically, their job is to help plants to make their own food by photosynthesis. As I said earlier, plants make their own food by photosynthesis. So these cells called photosynthetic cells, which are also known as palisade cells, they actually help plants to make their own food by photosynthesis. Root hair cells are basically cells that helps the plant to take or absorb water and mineral ions from the ground. So what they do is that they just get the water. So when, for example, a human is watering a plant, it actually goes into the roots or into the soil, and what happens is that the root hair cells, their job is to just kind of absorb that water and mineral ions from the ground and into the plant. And xylem cells, what they do is that after the root hair cells have got the water mineral ions, they basically have the tissue, and they transport the tissue of water mineral ions across the plant. So what they do is to just take all that water mineral ions and they kind of just transport it throughout the whole plant. And last of all, phloem cells are basically they transport the tissue that carries food made by photosynthesis around the body of the plant. So what they do is that the xylem cells, they carry the water mineral ions, but the phloem cells, they carry the food made by photosynthesis, and again, they carry it all around the plant. So now we're going to go on to the specific cells and their features. The first one is the photosynthetic cell. The photosynthetic cell are basically also known as palisade cells, and these specific cells help to make plants make their own food by photosynthesis. So the special features that they have, number one is specialized green structures called chloroplasts. So as you can see over here, they have many chloroplasts in their cells, and they actually contain a special chemical called chlorophyll that trap the light needed for photosynthesis. So chloroplasts contain chlorophyll, and they actually trap the light that is needed for photosynthesis, because photosynthesis actually is when they get sunlight and carbon dioxide to be able to produce oxygen and glucose. So therefore, the way they actually make their food is by getting carbon dioxide in the sunlight. So therefore, the chlorophyll actually allows them to trap the light needed for photosynthesis, which is their food. They also are usually positioned in continuous layers in the leaves. So these are not really specific features, but they're usually placed in the outer layers of the leaves, outer layers of the stem of a plant, so they can actually absorb as much light as possible. So they're usually kept in a place that is more visible to the light, so they can actually trap that light. And last of all, they also have a very large permanent vacuole that actually helps keep the cell rigid as a result of osmosis, which we're going to be talking about in more future videos. But when lots of these rigid cells are arranged together to form photosynthetic tissue, they help support the stem. They also keep the leaves spread out so they can capture as much light as possible. So the main aim of these is to just try to trap as much light as possible to be able to make to be able to do photosynthesis to make food for themselves. So that's basically what the aim of this is. So they have chloroplasts. They're usually positioned in layers of leaves, and they have a large permanent vacuole. Next is root hair cells. Root hair cells, as I said earlier, their job is to absorb as much water and mineral ions from the ground into the plants. And as you can see, this is how it looks like. It has very special features. So first of all, they actually they greatly increase the surface area available for water to move into the cell. So as you can see, there is actually a lot of surface area, believe it or not, but root hair cells actually have a lot of surface area, so that they can actually, try to get as much water as possible from the ground, so they can kind of like soak up and absorb the water so that they can actually transfer it to the plants. They also have a large permanent vacuole. As you can see, most of the root hair cell is actually in this diagram is actually for the vacuole, and the reason why they have a large permanent vacuole is so that this can speed up the movement of water from the soil across the root hair cells. So again, what the permanent vacuole does is that it actually just speeds up the movement of water so they can quickly get the water and transfer it to the plants. And last of all, they also have many mitochondria. So even though it doesn't show in this diagram, they actually have many mitochondria, so that because mitochondria does aerobic respiration, and that releases energy. So what it does is that the mitochondria actually releases energy. It transfers the energy needed for the active support of mineral ions into the root hair cells. So this is where the mineral ions take place. Because mitochondria gives energy, it can transfer the energy needed for mineral ions. So that's basically what that is. The next cell that we're going to be talking about is xylem cells. So xylem cells, their job is to actually help transport the tissue of water and mineral ions across the body of the plant. So basically, they try to get water and mineral ions across the whole plant. So over here we have an example of an xylem cell, and what we're trying to do over here is they're trying to obviously get the water and mineral ions across the plant. So they actually are also important in supporting the plant as well. So what happens is that they actually work while they're alive and while they're dead. So the xylem cells are alive when they're first formed, but a special chemical called linen, which is actually over here, so these orange things, they're called these special chemical called linen builds up in spirals in the cell walls. The cells die and form long hollow tubes that allow water and mineral ions to move easily through them from one end of the plant to another. So what it does is that it basically goes from being alive and then when it dies, it actually just forms these long hollow tubes, and it kind of just allows water and mineral ions to move easily through them, so that it can actually go more faster. So they kind of work while they're alive and while they're dead. And the last thing that we're going to be talking about for the xylem cells is actually about the spirals and rings of linen in the xylem cells, because they actually makes these cells, the spirals, these linen spirals and rings, they actually make them very strong, and it helps the cell to withstand the pressure of water moving up the plant, and they also support the plant stem. So these are basically why xylem cells are so important, and how it kind of keeps strong so that it can transfer water and mineral ions across the body of the plant. And the last cell we're going to be talking about for today is phloem cells. So phloem cells are basically cells that that actually is a specialized transport tissue that carries the food made by photosynthesis around the body of the plant, and is actually made up of phloem cells that form tubes rather like xylem cells. So phloem cells and xylem cells, they actually make similar tubes, so it's kind of similar. But phloem cells do not become lignified and die, so not like xylem cells that die and they become lignified. Instead, in phloem cells, they do not lignify and they do not die, and the dissolved food can move up and down the phloem tubes to where it is needed, and the adaptations of the phloem cells are also very important to know. So number one, there is actually the cell walls. So in this diagram, there is not really a cell wall, but the cell walls between the cells break down to form special sieve plates. So these are sieve plates over here. So these allow water carrying dissolved food to move freely up and down the tubes to where it is needed. So basically, again, just transfers all the water that is carrying the dissolved food so that it can go around the body of the plant. And they also lose a lot of the internal structures. Phloem cells actually lose a lot of the internal structures, but they're supported by companion cells that help them to keep alive. The mitochondria of the companion cells transfer the energy needed to move dissolved food up and down the plant in phloem. So, the main job is to move the water and mineral ions across the plant. So that's basically how they lose. This is the reason why they lose internal structures. So that's basically it for the 4 main examples of specialized cells in plants. I hope you guys enjoyed this lesson. Just as an overview of what we've learned today, we were hopefully able to explain what specialized cells are. So specialized cells are cells that have special features or characteristics that help them perform their job. We've also hopefully understood the 4 main examples of specialized cells in plants. So there are phloem cells, root hair cells, xylem cells, and photosynthetic cells. And last of all, we've also hopefully learned the jobs of each of these cells and their characteristics. Thank you for watching this video. Please give this video a thumbs up if it has helped you, and subscribe to School Station for more free science and maths lessons. Bye guys!